Whether you say the name Dr. Charles Swindoll or simply refer to him as he prefers, Chuck, many Christians around the world are familiar with the impact that this servant of God has made upon so many lives. His desire is to help establish the church with solid biblical foundation based on the faithful exposition of the Word of God to facilitate proper application to everyday life. His vision includes the importance of corporate worship, the emphasis on small group ministries that provide encouragement and accountability in the body. Dr. Swindoll first served on our board at Dallas Seminary, having been a student a number of years ago, and then served as our fourth president, and now continues our partnership in ministry as he serves the seminary as chancellor. He is currently the senior pastor of the Stonebriar Community Church in Frisco, Texas. He's the author of more than 50 books, featured Bible teacher on an international radio program, Insight for Living. He would not tell you this, but it airs nearly 2,000 times daily around the globe. He also would not want me to tell you this, but 1,000 pastors across a number of denominations were recently surveyed. And on February 4th, it was announced that next to Billy Graham, Dr. Swindoll is number 2. Only behind Billy Graham does our chancellor rank. From our perspective, we might have put him first. When asked about that, one of our graduates and the pastor of the great First Baptist Church of Dallas wasn't surprised at all when Robert Jeffress says he has such a depth in his preaching and yet can put the cookies on the lower shelf so that everybody can understand and apply God's word. One pastor to another with great admiration and affection. Chuck, we love you. We thank you for your willingness to be a part of today. Lord bless you as you share with this class a final challenge before they commence in their ministry. Would you welcome Dr. Charles Swindoll?
Well, I thought about you graduates the other morning. I was doing some serious reading. I was at the Hallmark greeting cards section looking for a Mother's Day card, and my eye was attracted rather to the Far Side section of cartoons, my favorite, Gary Larson stuff, and I found one that fit you to the T. The pier is full of slaves, and they're staring out toward the water, standing on this long pier, and there are some Roman soldiers frowning and looking at them, holding big swords and shields, and there's a long galley ship coming up to be tied up to the pier. And one of the slaves said to another, "Hey, Grog, that's a great looking ship. I wonder what makes it go." Well, to cut to the chase, tomorrow morning you're going to line up on the pier over at Preston World Baptist Church, and you're going to get a ticket that's going to get you on the galley. You're going to make your way down to the bottom tier, and you're going to grab an oar, and the rest of us are going to say, "Welcome aboard, fellow slaves. We've been looking for you. We've been needing you. You're going to help us make it go." And indeed you will. Now, I realize when I describe you in those words, it doesn't sound very flattering. I mean, after all, you're masters of theology and doctors of philosophy and all of these great titles. You're just slaves. So just get used to it. In fact, it's a good title. A fellow slave back in AD 55, wrote a group of slaves in Corinth about this very thing. And as he wrote them, he said, people should think about us this way. as slaves of Christ and stewards of the mysteries of God. He placed that entry into the log that you have been studying for a long time. The log is thick, yellowing with age. You have been analyzing this good ship ministry, and you have been looking at it from a distance. And you've had all these seasoned sailors tell you sea stories about life on a ship, what it's going to be like. But you never had the oar in your hands until tomorrow. Something's going to happen. All of a sudden, the words of your fellow slave from back in 55 are going to come in on top of you. And as the years pass, you're going to realize he knew what he was writing about. Because the term that he uses for slave or servant is the only time he uses it in all of his letters. All of his entries into the log, never and any other time Paul used this word. It's a unique term that means an under rower. Under rower. Fellow slaves of Paul, who lived many years later, named Robertson and Plummer, wrote this about that particular term. They wrote it in 1911, entered it into their words about the log itself. The word originally denoted those who row in the lower tier of the trireme. And a little later, they offer this synonym, underlings. So if under rower was a little bit of an insult, try underling. That works as well. Slave is what it's all about. We serve on the bottom level as under rowers. But not only that, Paul includes the word steward. This sounds a little more sophisticated, huh? Well, don't get your hopes up. The word really does mean housekeeper. But if you want to use maid, butler, house manager, that'll work. You see, we not only have oars in our hands when we do our best work, helping it go, we have the keys to the pantry. You've been given a set of them these last several years. And those keys not only let you into the pantry, they also make you acquainted with the recipes that you will follow as you prepare the meals for other people who will benefit from your helping make that good ship ministry go. Now, it's easy in the midst of all of this to sort of wish you were on another level to row, and maybe the first level to row, and who knows, you may be there someday. But you begin right at the bottom level, under rower on this good ship. Never once are we told that we will be the skipper of the ship. It isn't our prerogative to command the vessel. We don't steer it. We row. We cook. Our time is spent where very few people have the privilege of being. And so it's all important while there, throughout your life, that you fulfill the one requirement of stewards and under rowers. The same one who wrote those words added, "It is required that we be found trustworthy." That's the ticket. That's the key. Trustworthy under rowers, trustworthy maids and butlers, trustworthy people who study the recipes, fix the meals to serve up the secrets of God. You don't sit in an elegant dining room to be served. You have the responsibility of poring over this work to which you're called. And you have at all times that throbbing reminder, I am to be trustworthy. Now, as you faithfully row and as you faithfully cook, there will be times on this ship that you will face rough weather, high waves, criticism, doldrums, ingratitude, sacrifice. All of those things are to force you back to the reminder that it is required that we be trustworthy. So a strong warning is in order. And the warning is that you guard against an insidious temptation that will on occasion become more real than life to you. You will think, I've been at this a long time. I've been faithfully rowing. I've been preparing these good meals for years. I mean, it's about time that maybe I get a little credit. I could sure do well with a little more money. I'd like I'd like a little fame to go along with all this hard work. Those insidious, self-serving thoughts will come in, and they all have the same label. It's called self-pity. It's a reprehensible thing. Allow me a very personal story that goes back to when I graduated. When I sat in cap and gown and was preparing for my first place of ministry, I had the inestimable privilege of being invited to join and serve alongside one of the finest men of God I'd ever met, named J. Dwight Pentecost. He was everything I was not. Scholarly, a splendid teacher, seasoned minister, experienced pastor. He's a good preacher. Faithful student of prophecy. And if you had a prophecy conference and you didn't have Dwight Pentecost on the list, you missed out. People ask why. So he was well-traveled. He was world famous. Mine was the enviable position to serve as his assistant. I operated in his shadow. I got to see him up close and personal, where I'd only seen him before as a teacher in the seminary. And of all things, he asked me to join him. I had ready access to him, and we often would dialogue about life and ministry. And when he was gone, you guessed it, I had the chance to preach in his pulpit. Crowds gathered. Boy, were they disappointed when Dr. Pentecost wasn't there filling the pulpit. I thought they were coming to hear me in that crazy moment. But mine was a borrowed popularity. Crowds gathered on Sunday to hear this great man preach. And I have to add that I never once in my life, to this day, have seen him draw attention to himself. You know that. I mean, who else can lecture for those many hours just holding that little Bible? that slumped over look, that shoulder that twists, and that frown when you ask that ridiculous question. I was called to be an under-rower. Those were great days. I mean, we even had Stan Toussaint leading the music. We had a number of people that were saved off the street. One of the guys had been in a bar all of his adult life, and he said to me one day, "Hey, Chuck, this is a weird joint." He had just begun to get a hold of the scriptures, and he knew just enough to be dangerous. And he said, "You know what? I've been thinking about our church." "Really?" "Yeah. I mean, stop and think. We got a preacher named after a Jewish holiday." "Right?" "Yeah, Pentecost." "We got 2 saints leading music." "Okay? We got Swindoll running the church during the week. Nobody's around." "Yeah, I guess it's kind of weird, isn't it?" Good Ship Grace Bible Church survived in spite of me. But as a part of this story I haven't told you. Among our elders was a man named Jim, whom I got to know and love during my 4.5 years in that position. Jim dropped by one hot summer afternoon to talk with me. And I will never forget the conversation. He said, "Chuck, I'm your friend. I've seen you and Dr. Pentecost work closely together all these years, and I know you respect him, and I know he loves and trusts you. I want to warn you, Chuck. I want to warn you. Watch out for the adversary. He would love to place alien thoughts in your head, and you could begin to believe them." And then he got real serious. "You two have a great relationship, but of the two, yours is the more precarious. Avoid the temptation to drop his name while you're here and when you leave. Guard against any spirit of entitlement. His gifts have created what we enjoy here. You've only inherited them." Isn't that wise counsel? Restrain any and all attempts to gain attention or to find ways to promote yourself. You have the benefits to enjoy. Chuck, don't ever take advantage of them. The man was absolutely correct. I remember the words as if I heard them yesterday afternoon. What he was telling me was to take my seat on the lower tier and row, and to stay in that kitchen and follow that recipe and fix those meals. And to thank God from here to the end of your life that you have the joy of operating in the shadow of a man like that. I'm saddened today that Gehazi didn't have Jim to talk with him. What a privilege was Gehazi's. Not only did he serve alongside Elisha as an under-rower, he got to see what few eyes have ever seen up close and personal. He saw miracles take place. He was even there when the old Aramean commander, that rich skunk, shows up and he has a load of money, about $3 million, that he wants to pay for his cleansing, to get rid of this leprosy. Gehazi was there to see Elisha ignore the offer. And I didn't even mention the 10 suits of clothes he was ready to give him. And what prophet can't use a set of new clothes, huh? The process runs its course, and after he fights with the idea and finally turns his plan over to God's plan, He does exactly what the prophet says, and he comes back cleansed from leprosy. And the Gehazi saw that. When he returned, because he knew that he couldn't buy Elisha off, he came with a little bit less money. If I figure correctly, about 45, 50 grand of silver and a couple of suits of clothes. And at least take this. I mean, look, I'm healthy, I'm whole. Elisha says, as the Lord lives before whom I stand, I will take nothing. You don't buy the grace of God. But I have to tell you that some of that gold glittered in Gehazi's eyes. He picked up the gleam from the silver. And at that point, a wild imagination kicked in. The kind of imagination that Jim warned me about when he visited me that hot summer afternoon. It's like he goes nuts. But Gehazi, the servant of Elisha, the man of God. Notice how he's introduced. The under-rower. Sick of the oars. Sick of the kitchen. At least I can get a little out of this. Maybe Elisha doesn't need it. And so he even adds the same oath that Elisha used when he said, I won't take it. As the Lord lives. Isn't that going to be nice? Let's just add the blessing of God to this rationalization. As the Lord lives, I will run after him and take something from him. I checked rationalization in the dictionary. It means to devise self-satisfying but incorrect reasons for your behavior. That's an insidious temptation. And you'll face it as a servant. I mean, good night. Elisha's not given me a raise in 8 years. This guy's got a wad of it. He wants to give us the money, and I think Elisha might have offended him. This is what goes through your mind when you fiddle around with those kind of wicked thoughts. And so Gehazi pursues Naaman, and when Naaman saw him, then the lies start. Listen closely. 4 of them, one after another. Is all well? All is well. Lie number 1. It isn't well. Your heart is wicked, Gehazi. You're just too blind and selfish to see it. It isn't all well. My master has sent me. Lie number 2. Elisha had never sent Gehazi. But he knew that would milk a little money out of Naaman, and so he drops the name of Elisha. My master sent me. And I'm really not here for my own sake. A couple of seminary students from Austin, the hill country. Oh, it's Ephraim. I'm sorry. They showed up, and they don't have any money. We already heard that today. They didn't have any money. So if you could give something I could give to them and a couple of suits of clothes, that would be great. Lie, 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 lie. Naaman, for all the right reasons, says, take 2 talents. If I weigh that carefully and correctly, I believe about 150 pounds of silver. No wonder he gave him 2 servants to carry the 2 75-pound bags of silver back to where he could hide it. And he gave him the talents of silver and the 2 changes of clothing. And when they came to the hill, he took them from their hand and deposited them in the house, sent them in away. You guys get lost. Get out of here. No, it isn't over. And I don't want you to ever forget the consequence. Because the same man who has served this prophet now stands before him. He went and stood before his master, and Elisha said to him, where have you been, Gehazi? Where have you been? Your servant went nowhere. Can you believe this? He's gotten so used to lying, he lies to his master. And then he said to him, did not my heart go with you when the man turned from his chariot to meet you? Right now there's a cold chill running down his spine. Is it time to receive money and to receive clothes and olive groves and vineyards and sheep and oxen and male and female servants? Is that what you plan to get? What are you thinking, Gehazi? It's as if we've never been together. He doesn't wait for the answer. He says, therefore, the leprosy of Naaman shall cling to you and to your descendants forever. And the epitaph reads, he was a leper. Wow. Graduates, number one, guard your imagination. Guard your imagination. You're very bright people. That's part of your problem. Bright people have great imaginations. You dream big. Unfortunately, you often wind up on the throne of that imagination. Guard it. Second, restrain all rationalization. Call it what it is. Call it what it is. Selfishness, sinfulness, a spirit of entitlement. Leave no room for rationalization. Third, begin today before God to wipe out deception from your life. When you are confronted and you have been wrong, say those words, I am wrong. Don't act like everything is right when it's wrong. And all through your ministry, keep asking the question that I placed on my desk for my 4 years at the seminary, and I still have on my desk in front of me every day I am at that study at our church. What's your motive? What is your motive? Okay. Grog. Here's my advice. Row, row, row your boat. And never, ever quit. Loyally, faithfully serving Christ, the captain of your ship.